Hi guys, a lot of people have enjoyed my Genshin Impact lore videos and have said they're pretty relaxing, so I figured I'd put them in one big video for you guys to enjoy. Feel free to have this on in the background as something to relax to, or maybe you'll learn something new about your favorite game. Hope you enjoy. Who is Kachina? This kind-hearted and strong-willed youngling of the Children of Echoes never allows her feelings of defeat to keep her down for long. Determination to prove herself as a warrior, no matter how difficult, makes her willing to push through anything to one day prove her worthiness of the great name Uthibiti.
Hello! I'm Kachina, a member of the Children of Echoes. I adore green fruits and would love to become more strong, even though I'm still not much of a fighter. I should probably save all that for later, right? Then, are you hoping to go somewhere? I'm pretty familiar with these parts, so I can show you the way!
Like the other younglings of her tribe, the Children of Echoes, Kachina grew up with the folklore and heroic stories passed down by her tribal elders. Born with a great sense of adventure, growing up, it didn't take her long to learn her way around the mountains surrounding her tribe's land. She quickly developed a great instinct and skill for searching out and finding treasure and minerals buried beneath the ground. In her downtime, she'd often go to nearby music studios with her friends and dance. But growing up in the mountains of Natlan was a tough environment at times. Bumps and scratches were unavoidable, especially for a child. When Kachina did inevitably hurt herself, she would cry due to the pain like any other child would, but she would often be the first one to wipe away her tears and get back to her feet. She was never one to let things keep her down for long, and this continues going forward and turns out to be a big part of her personality. Kachina understands why the adult tribal members do see her as a good kid, but one thing she doesn't understand is why she was chosen by the Wayub to inherit the great name of Uthibiti.
Uthibiti is my ancient name. It means the ability to stay strong in the face of adversity. But I often wonder why the Wayub decided to give the name to me. I'm so weak, and whether at home or among the tribe, few people even know of me. With so many strong and cool people around me, am I really worthy of the name?
An ancient poem tied to the great name goes as follows, and this will be important later in the story. The one that dares stand as firm as a mountain, their bones like battlements, and hold the sun's gaze, it is they that shall be given unto eternity. Fear itself should instead fear me, for my body is like a roaring blaze, destined to melt down all that is mean and lowly, and then cast it once more as an epitaph. Breaking down this poem, it describes in a sense a determined warrior, capable of anything as long as they don't give up. Kachina has yet to figure out what the poem means or how it relates to her in any way. She only sees herself as an ordinary child who wants to be important enough to live up to her name and prove herself as worthy. Being granted the honor of having a great name does give her determination. No matter how many times her attempts at the pilgrimage of the return of the sacred flame don't end well for her, she keeps going. Even through being ostracized by her peers, her own feelings of disappointment and sometimes overwhelming negativity get her down, young Kachina is more determined than anyone to never give up. Besides the required applicant form for the pilgrimage of the return of the sacred flame pre-registration form that has a lot to say, there's a second optional page the candidates can fill out. It asks about hobbies, personal experiences, and other things like that. Originally, it was used by the promotional team to create materials to hype up participants, but after a while, practically everyone knew all the info about the best contestants. This made the second form kind of irrelevant and unnecessary, and over time, nobody took it seriously. All except for Kachina, who would carefully fill out the second form and every answer on it each time. The first question on the form is about hobbies. One of Kachina's favorite hobbies is dancing. Every member of the Children of Echoes knew about dancing, so much so that it became a stereotype for their tribe. Among her tribe members, Kachina has been a gifted dancer from a young age. Her other favorite hobby, which she honestly feels a bit embarrassed about, is digging. Her absolute favorite thing to do is to dig around tunnels and dig up minerals, but she feels like including this one on the form makes it look like she lacks a personality.
This is the first gem I found. It's such a pretty shade of green, don't you think? It was originally one half of a pear, but I gave the other one to Moalani. Look, the pattern on it looks just like flowing water. Oh, and this one too. It might look black at first glance, but put it under the sun and you'll see a rainbow of color. I built this collection one stone at a time.
The next question on the form is about the people closest to you. Kachina writes the names of her parents, as well as Io. Io is her Tipetlosaurus companion, the one who is always by her side. During her digging adventures, Io is always there with her. When she's with her parents, Io is there too. She deeply cares about this companion, and it makes her happy to think about. Though she'd like to add a few more names to the form, being Mualani, Kanich, and Pakao, there's only so much room to write. Whenever Kachina turns in her form, the worker on duty is always so surprised that she fills out the entire form. But she's fine with that, honestly. She wants to do everything that she possibly can to take the pilgrimage seriously. Tipetlosaurs and the Children of Echo's tribe have been living together since the time of Kachina's great-great-grandfather. It is custom within the tribe's people to work and live alongside them and to become companions. For the tribe, Saurians are not like livestock who depend on the humans for their livelihood, nor are they like pets. They stand as equals to the people of the tribe. Most bonds between Tipetlosaurs and humans are formed willingly, like Kachina and Io. These Saurians' nests are never too far from the humans' dwellings. It's custom for both the humans and the Saurians to treat each other as neighbors and respectfully treat each other as such. It's not at all unusual for the two species to interact. When Kachina was younger, she'd often run into a young Tipetlosaur at the crossroads on her way to the mines. She'd always say hi to him. After some time, they began to remember and recognize each other in different places around the village. Eventually, they'd not only greet each other, but they'd exchange gifts as well. For Kachina, befriending this Saurian wasn't complicated. She didn't have to worry about proving her worth to him. They simply just felt comfortable hanging out together. One day, the Tipetlosaur followed Kachina home, where it became a family companion. She named him Io, and from then on, young Io showed her loyalty and companionship as any other friend would. Even through Kachina's failures, Io was a true friend to her and never left her side as her other so-called friends would. He simply just stood by her side, friendship never wavering.
Io is a very important companion to me. Even though he looks well behaved now, he really loved headbutting people when he was younger. He's super strong, so even I get knocked over sometimes. Not much you can do about it, though, because it's just how Tipetlosaurs show their affection. Oof! Io! Stop headbutting me! Alright, I won't say any more.
Uthabiti, Kachina's ancient name, carries the meaning of toughness and tenacity. At first, Kachina didn't think she was at all worthy of such an ancient name. After looking at the ancient woven scrolls and learning about the ancient heroes who carried the name before her, she felt even more confused. All of these heroes possessed an incredible amount of power, and their names all have been known for generations. These heroes had maintained their character and strength despite the difficulties they were put through. Through surviving in the harshest conditions, protecting their homelands against the abyss, and facing dangers of war constantly, they never abandoned their responsibilities. Kachina struggled to find this kind of strength within herself. She wasn't nearly as good in battle as the warriors of the Collective of Plenty, and she didn't have near the agility of the riders of the Flowerfeather clan members. She was constantly belittled and degraded by other warriors. She felt a long way from being anything even close to strong. After thinking on it and reaching the conclusion that she wasn't good enough, she was quiet for a while. But she quickly let go of these feelings of sadness. Not because she was training to become a warrior, not because she reached a truth or a revelation, or that her friends and family were worried. Her choice to not let herself succumb to the feelings of her own inferiority came down to her own philosophy. No matter how badly you fall, the first thing you have to do is get back up. And that's exactly what she did. Even when she was younger, when she would fall or get hurt, she'd be back on her feet far before any other child. Even if she was in pain, she wouldn't let it keep her down for long. This has always been true for her. Even while facing hopelessness and fear due to her feelings of inferiority and unworthiness of her great name, she still stood back up. Being so young, she didn't yet know how to fully control her feelings. She'd wear her emotions on her sleeve, but even when she was sobbing and sniffling in front of everyone, she'd just keep pushing forward. Maybe she was stronger than she thought.
Oh, I don't know how I managed to screw things up again today. No, I don't want to cry, but I just can't seem to help myself. Didn't we both already say goodnight to each other? Thank you for staying up and comforting me, though. It means a lot.
After her return from the Night Kingdom, other households of the tribe looked at Kachina and her family differently. Those who had never spoken to them before or who had only been acquaintances had began to actively seek out the family to socialize. The conversations would inevitably turn to be about Kachina. They would praise her bravery and toughness and strengths. Having experienced so many setbacks in her journey and in the end finally returning victorious, others could see her persistence. Her defeats were easily forgotten by everyone except her. Something felt off to her. Her mistakes were being ignored by everyone, even though they still plainly existed. Nothing had really changed, besides the way she was treated after her return. Everyone else could forget about her countless failures, but she couldn't, nor did she think she should. She thought that even after tasting victory, she simply could not compare to the other heroes who were victorious time and time again. Her success was in large part due to the support of her friends. There was no way that she could suddenly become her idealized version of herself that easily. She was still young. She still couldn't stop herself from crying when she messed up, no matter how badly she wanted to be the Kachina that always kept going no matter what. In her mind, she figured out a new understanding to her ancient name. Not getting knocked down is one type of tough, but maybe not losing yourself in all the flowers and praise is another. Every child in the Children of Echoes tribe has heard fables about raw ore and gems. This story in particular stood out to Kachina. Before raw ore had been unearthed by the Children of Echoes, it slept soundly below the depths of the mountains. Just an ordinary chunk of rock. Even through being brought to the surface by miners after years of erosion from the rocks above, the ore had not realized its worth. As it was broken, chiseled, and polished by humans, it felt immense pain and did not understand its purpose or what was happening. Even though in the eyes of the humans this was a beautiful process, the ore questioned why must it happen to them. Though the purpose was to reveal its true nature as a gem, the words remained unsaid by the grindstone, who had undergone the process of polishing countless other ores. Until the work was complete, the ore could not see that in the eyes of others the process had made it into a beautiful gemstone. As Kachina walked through the Night Kingdom alone, she recalled this childhood story. She remembered asking her parents questions about what happened to the gemstones. The chill of the Night Kingdom distracted her from reflecting too much on the story, but the memories of her parents brought her warmth. Whether or not she was a shattered ore or a gem that had still not been discovered, she had to push on. She had more things she wished to do, and people she wished to see again. Soon she found herself bathed in sunlight once again, seeing the outstretched hand of the traveler. At that moment, she knew what a gemstone should look like. A sturdy and strong structure, capable of holding up the world even in the darkest hour. At this moment, she had proved herself. She had returned triumphantly from the pilgrimage. The day when she could inspire others had finally come. Many tears and courage had finally smelted the gemstone Kachina. There are many stories of the ancient name Uthabiti, the name now held by Kachina. These stories are traced by golden threads on the banner of Uthabiti. The first thread shows a story of a sword wielder, a girl no taller than a child. She once held back the collapse of the cliffs with her own two hands, saving the lives of the entire tribe. In spirit, she was many times greater than the greatest warriors of all of Natlan. The bright fire of her life burned out quickly, but even at death's door, her spirit remained bright. The second, a brave warrior who fought year after year with his shield, never wavering no matter how much time had passed. Even in his urn after death, his ashes attempted to solidify and burst through, declaring that he could not fit in such a small tomb. His remains were finally scattered amongst the mountains, causing thunder as they drifted down the mountain. The third shows anonymous name holders, whose deeds have been forever hidden by history, though their final moments were peaceful. The fourth strand is offered to the great spear wielder, who held the name high above the pilgrimage. In the Night Kingdom, she traveled with the souls of warriors who battle eternally. Tears do not lessen the glory of the name Uthabiti, and her return from the Night Kingdom marked the beginning of a new age.
There are a lot of legends about heroes in Natlan, and my favorite one is the one about Lord Trowray. How incredibly cool is it to be able to seal the abyss beneath the ground as an ordinary mortal? Oh, that reminds me. You've been to a bunch of countries in Teyvat, so you must know a lot of legends, right? I'm super curious. Could you tell me some of them when you can find the time?
After Kachina's first pilgrimage of the return of the Sacred Flame had ended failure, all of her expectations from before had come to nothing. Everyone around her doubted her abilities, and even more painfully, she began to doubt as well, thinking maybe even the Wayab gets it wrong sometimes. It was around this time that she discovered what digging meant to her. She had always loved drilling into the depths of the mountains in search of treasure, but this time she didn't dig with any particular goal. She just bored forward, as though as long as she kept going, the disappointment and sorrow she felt would never be able to bore themselves into her heart, but instead bore into the dirt. Digging made her feel much happier, as if she might turn up with something good rather than just defeat. That failure at the pilgrimage would not be erased, it would forever be a part of her story. The word failure echoed constantly within her head. The people of Natlan say that the children of Echoes are stubborn, always charging forward. Stopping was never an option in Kachina's mind. Even if above she could never be a towering hero, all she could do was keep moving onward, one step at a time. Kachina didn't yet realize that this persistence was something special in of itself. While digging, she would occasionally dig something interesting up, like how on this day she dug up her vision. Receiving it, she was quite happy, though she had already experienced this feeling before when she received her ancient name. The acknowledgement of an Archon, nor that of the Wyab, meant that she could accomplish some great deed. Tales of young heroes weren't encouraging ones, but dark and gloomy ones instead. But with the initial motivation they need to achieve greatness present, as long as the protagonist keeps moving forward, the future will be bright for them. But in those stories, the characters can never know the ending beforehand. All they can do is keep moving with everything they have. Who is Arataki Ito? Despite wanting to appear as someone who others should fear, Ito is mostly a kind person with a joking and lighthearted personality. He's the first and self-proclaimed greatest head of Inazuma's Arataki gang. He's highly respected by his gang, and he's liked by most of the people of Inazuma, though he is frequently at odds with the Tenryou Commission and Kujosara, despite him and his gang's crimes being nothing more than just harmless antics and pranks most of the time.
I'm the head honcho of the Arataki gang, and everyone knows my names. I have many. Arataki, the one and only Ito. Arataki, the Oni Sumo King Ito. Arataki, the pride of Oni Ito. Arataki, Beetle Gladiator Ito. Arataki, the ultimate TCG champion Ito. Arataki, he might lose, but he'll never admit defeat. Anyway, these are some of the ones I usually go by, so go ahead, take your pick. I'll respond to whichever one you choose, I promise. You're welcome.
Ito is an Oni and takes a lot of pride in his Oni heritage, his key traits being his Oni horns and his loud voice. Ito is very much a free soul, always in search of adventure and always joyful wherever his spirit takes him. He very much dislikes anyone who discriminates against his kind though. He recognizes and is always grateful for the sacrifice made by the Blue Oni to ensure that their kind could be accepted into present-day human society. Ito always sticks by the age-old pact to never use his strength for malicious purposes.
The Oni have been through a lot to get to where we are today. And look at us now, living peacefully alongside the humans. Unfortunately, there's still plenty of people out there who've got a bone to pick with us. Change? Oh yeah, things are gonna change, all right, you can count on that. But I'll tell you what, it won't involve any sucking up to the humans on my part, nuh-uh. I'm gonna let my actions do the talking. They'll come to respect me eventually.
Due to Ito's pride, he is extremely competitive, though he knows when to concede or when he's going too far. He can usually be found in Hanamazaka, and it's not hard to notice him in his enthusiasm. He claims to be the first and greatest head of the Arataki gang, which he founded. He tried explaining his duties to some of the Tenryou Commission officials when they came to him to investigate a street brawl, though it was rather harmless. After a couple of minutes of him explaining, they interrupted him before marking him down as unemployed, though that's not entirely accurate. But the shogunate does not acknowledge gang activities as work. Ito often does odd jobs for money when he needs it, usually working one day before taking the next 3 off, plus gang activities. See, he's productive.
Oh, so they're saying I can't hold down a real job, huh? Well, sorry to break it to you, but I'm a delinquent. That means it's my job not to have a real job. And if anyone's got a problem with that, who's got a problem with that, huh? You got a problem with that? You got a problem with... Choking. Sorry, I got a little worked up there. Where was I? Oh yeah, so work isn't really my thing, but don't worry, I don't rob or steal or anything like that. When I'm really running low on funds, I just take the odd job here and there to make ends meet. You know, like transporting stuff, delivering documents, helping businesses attract customers, just enough to keep the wolf from the door.
Unfortunately for Ito, his reputation in Inazuma City leaves much to be desired. Although he's not considered a villain by the public, he's certainly not a law-abiding citizen. He's not seen as a huge threat to anyone though. This scenario used by Inazuma's people to discipline their children better explains it. One of the threats to the misbehaving children is if you don't behave, the great Mujina yokai will grab you and take you deep within the mountains, or you'll be inlaid upon the shogun's statue. As for Ito, the threats are much less severe, like if you don't behave, Arataki Ito will will come and snatch your snacks. Seem much less severe of a threat, but not something that you'd like to happen either. But still, that's far from the truth of what Ito would actually do. Snatching a child's candy wouldn't happen because, according to Ito's code of law, the fate of the snacks would have to be decided by ritual combat. In the eyes of many people, winning snacks off of children through competition is exceedingly shameless. But Ito believes that every battle must be taken seriously and treats them all as such. They're all treated the same, whether it's a battle against a child or the shogun herself. Also, due to his conviction, Ito can lose to a child without any reservations, the same as he could lose to anyone else. While the adults of Inazuma City have much to say about Ito's behavior, the children just see him as some sort of big playmate. Their competitions are often Onikabuto beetle battles. These are fun for both sides to watch and give the children a fair shot, unlike actually fighting them. For the longest time, the Tenryou Commission has seen the Arataki gang as just sort of a troublemaker group who don't require too much attention. The group only has around 10 members at most, and there are many internal disagreements within the group anyway, mostly about the date of its founding. Akira believes that the group began when Ito first saved him from a group of bandits. On that day, Ito persisted in the fight even after being knocked down several times. The bandits eventually backed off in annoyance to his persistence. Helping Akira back to his feet, Ito declared him a member of the Arataki gang. Genta and Mamoru believe that the gang was founded at the end of the year when they all camped on the outskirts of Inazuma City and roasted lavender melons together. On that day, not any of them had a single mora to their name, and they were all very hungry. While eating a lavender melon himself, Ito declared that they should do that every year as a sort of tradition. In Shinobu's perspective though, the gang was officially formed when she had to drag Ito out of the shogunate jail, since this was the first time that any official records were made about the group. As for Ito, he believes that the gang has existed from the first moment that the words entered his mind, though unfortunately he no longer remembers when that was. And as for Granny Oni, the human who has taken care of Ito since he was young, there is no such thing as the Arataki gang. She just sees Ito and his friends.
In the Arataki gang, we're proud to welcome people who've experienced adversity in their lives. Don't listen to the people who call us freaks or weirdos. Every member of my gang is like family to me, and they all feel the same way. Whatever happens, the gang will face it together, both the highs and the lows. Nobody questions my leadership in the gang. What I say goes. Except when it comes to Shinobu. She's always challenging everything I say, and not only that, all the hard-earned loot I bring back and share with everyone, she goes and returns it. But also, she gets me out of jail and out of every mess we get ourselves into, so I'll let it slide. Besides, I don't want to get on her bad side. An angry Shinobu would make my life a nightmare.
The Oni have called Inazuma their home since ancient times. They existed alongside the Hakushin Kitsune bloodline and the Tengu. Yokai like them often have supernatural abilities, but the Oni lack many special traits. Other than the horns on their heads, the Oni are mostly remembered for their explosive tempers and tendency to make trouble. As for their fear of beans, it has a real scientific basis. Oni are actually highly allergic to beans, but because of how much the Oni bloodline has thinned out over time, most people display only very minor allergic reactions. But unfortunately for Ito, because of his Oni heritage, Ito is extremely allergic to beans. Even touching one can cause him to go into shock, not to mention eating them can cause him to be bedridden for days at a time. This makes beans the only thing that carefree Ito is wary of in his daily life.
I am an Oni, so there's nothing I hate more than beans. Soybeans, mung beans, whatever. I hate them all. Just touching one is enough to set off my allergies, let alone eating them. We have to get people to resist this constant urge to throw beans everywhere.
And to do their part, the Arataki gang members are careful not to order any dishes containing beans, not even in private, as a way to show respect to him. Of all foods containing beans, Ito fears fried tofu the most. He claims that even the sight of it leaves him sick for 3 days straight. When someone mentions fried tofu to Ito, a certain victory comes to mind. One day, after a long day of work, Ito went to sit in a chair outside of his favorite food stand. But going there, he found a fox-eared lady sitting there instead. A contest of words started between the hungry Ito and the lady, which turned into a fully unnecessary battle. Ito, being hungry, chose an eating contest. The lady chose the theme of Kitsune ramen. Ito was at a loss when he realized that the ramen contained fried tofu, but with his pride on the line, he continued anyway to victory. As for the chair, it was given to Ito by the food stand owner as a trophy.
I crushed that Kitsune ramen eating contest we had. Even all that fried tofu couldn't stand in my way. She didn't come close to beating me. I was, bedridden for more than a month after that. But you know what? I'd rather lie in bed a winner than walk away a loser. So, Anyway, I had the last laugh because she had to foot the bill for 32 bowls of noodles. Ha ha!
As for the other contests that Ito has been a part of, two in particular stand out to him as rather frustrating. One of them is a rematch that he demanded of Kujo Sara, who defeated him and took his vision as a result of her duties in the Tenryou Commission. To this day, she refuses to agree to a street corner sumo match that Ito wants, and it frustrates him to no end.
You know what? Yeah, she beat me during the Vision Hunt decree. I'm not ashamed to admit it. When you lose, you admit defeat. And when you screw up, you take it on the chin like a man. And anyway, let's not forget which one of us won't agree to a rematch. Her, the Tengu warrior. It's just a sumo street fight. I mean, what's she so afraid of? If she keeps snubbing me, I'm gonna have to stop calling her Kujo Tengu and start calling her Kujo Chicken. We'll see what she thinks of that.
The other is something that happened many years ago when Ito was young. He had gotten into an argument with a young Tengu, which resulted in a sumo match in the Byakko Plain. Unexpectedly though, the fight sent them both barreling down the side of the mountain. In the end, the Tengu ended up carrying Ito all the way home because he couldn't walk after spraining his ankle. This match has also gone unsettled. Both of these incidents had to do with Tengu, and Ito doesn't understand how they're so strong despite looking so skinny. Every Oni child has heard the ancient tale of the Crimson Oni and the Blue Oni, how the gentle and helpful Crimson Oni defeated the wicked Blue Oni and won the respect of the humans. This was Ito's favorite story as a child, and he has always been proud of his red Oni horns and Crimson Oni lineage. This pride, however, was once shaken by a certain incident. When incidents of robbery started happening in young Ito's village, his family fell under immediate suspicion because of their Oni heritage. Though he no longer remembers the details of what happened, he remembers the disgusted and wary stares of the villagers at him and his parents as they left the village, as well as their parting words, once an Oni, always an Oni. No matter the time period, humans just saw all Oni as the same. In that case, wouldn't it be better to be a Blue Oni who the humans feared, Ito thought? That would be preferable to him and his parents being driven out of their village despite doing absolutely nothing wrong. After Ito's parents died of illness, he was turned out to the streets on his own. He would lay into anyone who spoke down upon his race, though it was mostly the others insulting him. But he proved to be resilient, never giving up no matter how many times he was knocked down. But still, he was only a child, and eventually collapsed on the street due to exhaustion and hunger after a round of beatings. At this moment, Ito was saved by an old woman, a human woman. She cared for him from then on, despite him being defiant at first because she, a human, was never expected to care for an Oni like him. Ito never expected that kindness.
Granny Oni isn't an Oni at all. In fact, she's the kindest human that has ever lived. She only got her nickname because she took me in. If people have got a problem with me, fine. I don't care what other people think anyway. But I wish people wouldn't go after her because of me.
As a recent year was coming to a close, the Arataki gang met to talk about how they might celebrate the new year. Unlike more reputable organizations, they didn't have any fixed venues to hold activities. The lavender melon roasting suggestion came up, but was quickly eliminated. Eating just lavender melons wasn't a good way to celebrate the new year. An Onikabuto festival was considered, but since the end of the year wasn't mating season for the beetles, they wouldn't be nearly as motivated as they usually were to fight. Eventually lots were drawn, and the Great Sing-Along was selected. This activity was suggested by Ito himself. It entailed everyone standing on an oceanside cliff, singing against the wind to express their feelings and well wishes for the future. Many of the gang members rejected this idea in their hearts when they found out about it. Shinobu even said that she'd like to leave and return home on that day, but the event went on nonetheless. Yelling at the wind proved to be quite soothing, and as things turned out, Ito turned out to be a pretty good singer. How did Ito get his vision? This story turned out to be kind of anticlimactic. He just found it under his hip after waking up one morning. That day, he went around excitedly telling everyone he met that he'd received a vision. So much so that everyone got very sick of hearing the story. A few days later, the story changed a bit to Ito saying that you'd expect someone as great as the head of the Arataki gang to have a vision, and then later to him saying that a person's worth isn't something that can be determined by them owning a vision. Being an Oni, perhaps the human standards don't apply to his receiving of a vision. However, the gods recognize his steadfast nature, pride, and good heart, which is more than likely why he was picked to have a Geo vision. Ito has always done everything he can to best care for his vision.
Don't even ask. Just the thought of it makes my blood boil. Ooh. First, the Shogun's army goes out and steals everyone's precious visions, which already a heinous crime, right? But then they go and stick them all over that statue with absolutely no sense of organization whatsoever. I mean, Think about it. The more powerful the vision, the higher up on the statue it should go. That would make sense, right? But no, some Class A jerk in the Tenryo Commission thought it'd be funny to put my vision right at the very bottom. Come on!
Who is Kaveh? Residents of Sumeru likely know his name well. To them, Kaveh is a well-known architect who many have described to be a genius. He's one of the most high-profile figures in Sumeru's architectural industry. He puts everything into his work, literally everything he has, and we'll discuss that later in this video.
I'm glad you gave me a chance. I always think it takes people with similar tastes to sustain a pleasant conversation. Nice to meet you. I'm Kaveh, an architect. If you have a project you'd like me to work on, then I'll need a detailed description of what you have in mind.
As an honors Koshara War graduate, Kaveh has a passion for the arts. He greatly appreciates the aesthetics of architecture, mechanics, and design. He's greatly empathetic and thoughtful towards everyone he meets, and is known for helping anyone he sees who's in need, even going as far as to provide his own mora. Once he even purchased dozens of keychains from a vendor whose proceeds were to go to feeding hungry children. He believes that mutual assistance and fairness are the keys to success. Kaveh is very passionate about his career as an architect. His greatest work and masterpiece is the Palace of Alcazar-Zure. In his outstanding work, he's seen as a role model to other Koshara War students. To this day, students idolize him for his projects, some of which being single-handedly designing the Palace of Alcazar-Zure, renovating the lighthouse of Port Ormos, modifying the port's elevators and cargo structures, and his role in the spatial optimization of the surrounding areas. Many students only dream of having a resume like this. His reputation is fully due to his work. He puts his heart and soul into his projects and spares no effort. Kaveh pays special attention to the aesthetic aspects of his designs and creations.
You must have seen the Palace of Alcazar-Zure before. That's my magnum opus. I sacrificed so much for that. Everyone else thought I'd lost my mind. Well, if you're not me, and you don't share my trade, I wouldn't expect you to understand. It'd be nice to meet someone who did understand, though.
Interestingly enough, though, despite his fame, reputation, and seemingly successful career, not many know much else about him. Nobody knows the truths that he keeps hidden behind his stories, especially not that the man has gone completely bankrupt over a singular project. Those who are aware tend to keep it a secret, and Kaveh himself is terrified of the secret getting out. The titles he's known for don't affect him personally, rather to him they can be seen as shackles at times. As an example, he believes that somebody with no fame could outwardly live by the means they have. A famous architect couldn't just admit to being penniless without causing others' views of him to change. To prevent this, he outwardly wears a facade of a man living in leisure. He's terrified to admit the truth of his situation publicly because he doesn't want people to see him as less. So though he may show it on the outside by wearing fancy designer clothes, helping others, and seeming overall happy, Kaveh is far from living his ideal life. So how did he lose everything he owned? That's a long and complicated story, so let's just start at the beginning. Kaveh was born into a scholarly family in Sumeru, his father being from the Ruwahi Starshan and once working for the academia, and his mother being a Koshara War graduate and a famous architect herself. Kaveh was inspired by them at a young age and was very interested in architectural design, even playing with block puzzles as a child. It was there that young Kaveh would gain his understanding of home. His happy family life would not last forever though. At some point during Kaveh's childhood, partly due to Kaveh's encouragement, his father would join the Erdarshan Championship. His father would just barely miss becoming champion and proceed to go missing for some time after his defeat. His disappearance would terrify Kaveh and his mother. Unfortunately, following this, some tragic news would come to the family. His father had died in an accident in the desert. While Kaveh's mother would fall into intense anxiety and depression, Kaveh would blame himself for his father's death. He thought that if he hadn't encouraged his father to join the competition, none of this would ever have happened. Seeing his mother unable to smile again, Kaveh would live with this guilt for the remainder of his life. His definition of home shattered, and no matter how much he wished, nothing could take back the past. At the time, there was little he could do because of his young age. Out of guilt, he always kept his mother company and did his best to support her in any way possible. As he grew up and enrolled in school, he would inevitably spend less and less time with his mother. It wasn't his fault, he was just growing up. Eventually, she decided to travel to Fontaine, and after receiving a job offer, she left home for good. This would leave Kaveh completely alone in his once happy and safe childhood home. He would deeply miss her, but he knew this was what was best for her. And despite his internal feelings, he would never once admit his overwhelming loneliness. He believed that as someone capable of harming his father, he deserved all that came to him. His tragic early life is what taught him to care for others, and set his mindset. For many years onward, Kaveh would continue helping anyone and do anything they asked of him, but no matter what he does or how much he helps others, the guilt still remains. After graduating, Kaveh began his work by helping with a group project with the other students of the same darshan. The work would weigh on him heavily, but he would put all of his energy into it. It would end up with him shouldering the project's work for the other students for 2 entire years. But after gaining enough experience, he left that in order to pursue work under his own name. This marked the beginning of his career as an architect, and through his hard work he was able to save up quite a bit of Mora. Soon though, he ran into issues. The demands of the market became very different from academic design. His clients' requests became harder and harder to meet as artistic design became less and less relevant, partly due to the ideal of the 6 sages. Kaveh would suggest various beautiful designs only to be rejected on them being meaningless and non-practical. Felt as if he had no freedom with his designs, with everyone being skewed towards necessity and practicality. He was forced to stick to these ideals though that he didn't particularly like because his projects required investments and funding. With his career and his dreams at odds, Kaveh gave himself a long vacation. Upon returning, he would find a letter from his mother informing him that she had decided to remarry in Fontaine. Kaveh would take part in the wedding and was grateful to see his mother smile once again. Afterwards, returning to Sumeru, he would feel lost and lonely once again, having nothing but himself and the empty childhood home that his mother had left to him. The more he worked in the construction industry, the stronger his dislike of society became. Soon though, a turning point came when he was sought out by a wealthy merchant, Dori, to construct a private mansion. She only had 2 conditions: that the mansion be large and extravagant. Kaveh would question her regarding details of the design, but she was uninterested. Only that she wanted it to be built in a secluded place for business purposes, which Kaveh was careful not to ask too many questions about. But as for aesthetics, Dori let Kaveh do as he wished, which was perfect for him. Mansion construction without limits is exactly what he would want to put his all into. Dori would provide the mora and resources, Kaveh would do the work. Simple business practice. Kaveh once insisted on his design going down in history. Precisely planned and picked everything to the tiniest detail. From the beautiful cliffside location to the placement of flowers in the extravagant garden, everything seemed to be going perfectly. That is, until the unpredictable happened. Even with every consideration Kaveh had made, he never would have predicted that the Withering would move in overnight when the mansion was 70% complete. Before strangers were able to disperse the Withering, the entire building and years worth of work were beyond saving. This angered both Dori and Kaveh. He begged her to allow him to rebuild and finish his work on the Palace of Alcazarzaray. However, Dori would point out that he was the one who made the final decision for the location of the mansion. If she were to allow him to rebuild, who would cover the losses? Over the course of that night, Kaveh sat atop the ruins contemplating. He had his own savings and the property his mother had left to him. Did it even feel like home anymore anyway? He made a final decision. He sold his childhood home and took that money along with his own savings to Dori, which accounted for 70% of the necessary mora required for the construction of the Palace of Alcazarzaray. Dori agreed and was willing to pay for the final 30%. This is how Kaveh, a famous architect, lost everything. The palace was completed on a beautiful sunny day and Kaveh had truly given his all to the construction. This was his greatest architectural achievement, though in the end the property didn't belong to him in the slightest and left him completely bankrupt. Dori also requested payment for the final 30%, which left Kaveh highly in debt to her. While he did what he could to oppose and resist this, his own guilt and ideals consumed him and he agreed to pay. Dori could immediately sense that he was only paying not for her sake, but for the sake of his own ideals, and she took full advantage of that. Kaveh would then become homeless for a period of time after the construction was finished. Now directionless, broke, and living in a world run by Mora, Kaveh felt completely lost. But due to how he was raised, he refused to let anyone know of the situation. His colleagues praised him for his astounding work on the palace, the human narrative to its design, craftsmanship, and his imagination. But they would all remain unaware that this project had cost him literally everything. Kaveh would frequently find himself at a local tavern and turning to alcohol to comfort himself. His body wasn't very tolerant either, collapsing only after 1 bottle.
I like to have a drink or two when I've got the time. It's a good way to de-stress. Oh, yeah, I mean, mostly just to pass the time. What's that look for? All right, I admit it. Maybe I do drown my sorrows a little more often than I was letting on. It all gets a bit too much sometimes, with the unfinished projects, obstacles that I can't overcome, misunderstandings with other people. Don't you struggle with those kinds of things as well?
Lambad, the owner of the tavern, reserved a seat and a few free drinks for him, and as thanks, Kaveh helped him redesign the booth and the seating area. Occasionally, Kaveh would run into old friends from his time at the academia. They'd drink together, talk, and gather inspiration. Eventually, though, he would encounter someone, an old friend and academia scribe named Alhaitham. He enrolled later than most of his age. Alhaitham's grades and expertise at the academia stood out above the rest. He was mysterious, and nobody knew where to find him normally, but when others heard his name, he was known for his intelligence. Old researchers from the Kashara War would say that he's too intelligent for his own good and hard to get along with. When Kaveh first met him, he would meet him in the academia and speak to him out of curiosity. He would soon realize that Alhaitham was extremely talented and gifted, much like himself, but was also completely different from him in regards to personality, social interactions, and academic direction. Kaveh's least favorite memories from school were those of a group project he and Alhaitham took on together. They each recognized each other's abilities and decided to conduct research on ancient structures, runes, and linguistics. At first this was a group project, but it was quickly left to just Kaveh and Alhaitham as the other students couldn't keep up and began to drop out. Arguments first arose when Kaveh attempted to stop the students from dropping off the project and wanted to help them to understand their work, while Alhaitham saw this as charity, useless, and would not change their differences in ability. Eventually, with only the two left on the project, disputes between them only got worse and worse.
I guarantee you'll never meet anyone else who's as infuriating as him. And for the record, yes, I would say that to his face. Sure, he's smart, and sure, geniuses often come with a bad temper. But that's only half the story with him. He knows perfectly well how to appear friendly and likable to others, he just doesn't want to. If he ever gives you the impression that he doesn't really have a temper, or that he's rigidly logical like a machine, then you just don't know him well enough yet. He definitely has a personality. It's just too big a personality. Most people wouldn't get it.
Kaveh saw Alhaitham as egotistical, and that he'd be much more welcomed by people if he was just willing to help out. Alhaitham saw Kaveh as the opposite, pointed out that Kaveh's idealism would come to be a burden of his existence one day, and was only fueled by his inescapable sense of guilt that he still carried from his father's death. The two would quickly part when Alhaitham pointed this out to Kaveh's face. This failed project would become an unavoidable part of Kaveh's past, and after losing everything due to his work on the Palace of Alcazarzaray, Kaveh would finally see the meaning in his old friend's words.
Someone set up a stand on the street saying that for each handmade keychain they sold, a child in poverty would be given a meal. Kaveh bought at least a dozen. This is Sumeru, where even healthcare is free. I needn't say more.
Meeting Alhaitham in the tavern was the last thing Kaveh expected. After reconnecting, Kaveh unloaded his unfortunate life story to his old friend, finally telling someone where everything went wrong. Alhaitham, though, seeing through him once again, would ask, how was realizing your ideals gone for you? At this point, Kaveh was at a loss. Soon after, Kaveh would find himself roommates with Alhaitham, living in a house converted from the same research station that the academia had provided them with back in the day. Kaveh, still plagued with his guilty conscience, would mention helping out with household chores, only to be burdened with them himself. He saw that his past friend hadn't, and will never change. But at such a low point in his life, he was satisfied just to have a roof over his head. Also, fun fact, these two characters are the only ones with a shared idol.
Where's my...
Wait.
Just the time to accompany them.
Not again.
Whatever.
Alhaitham does respect Kaveh as a master builder and craftsman. He sees him as a mirror of himself, but believes his personality and values do not match his abilities. He believes him to be emotionally fragile and far too considerate of others.
He tends to be overly sensitive about everyone and everything he crosses paths with, and he's constantly making a fuss about nothing. Maybe it's because he's too emotionally fragile.
Something Kaveh always has with him is his sketchbook. This old leather-bound book has pages and scraps from things from all over the course of Kave's life. It includes drawings, journal entries, quotes, clippings, all of Kave's memorabilia. During his time as a student, Kave was often busy with various projects, in which he would visit various ruins with his fellow students. On one of their studies, there was a cave-in, nearly trapping Kave and 2 others in the ruin. Kave was able to push them out though, and just barely escape himself with only a couple minor wounds. He had heard of things called visions, but originally thought that they would appear during moments of crisis. Having been through a crisis already, he figured that he had not received the favor of the gods and eventually ceased to think about visions for some time. He just continued on with his life. This continued until the first version of the Palace of Alcazarzaray was destroyed by the Withering. Once he made his decision to do as he felt right, he sold his home and belongings the next day, and then would invest every single mora he had into rebuilding the Palace of Alcazarzaray. After selling the sale of the house, he returned one last time. He used flatbread to make a simplified version of the palace. This type of dish was taught to him by his father, and he had not made it since his father's passing. Once he finished making the dish, he decided to smash it and start eating. But when he smashed it, he saw a shimmering dendro vision laying inside the bread on the center of his plate. Unable to believe it, he accepted the vision, though this favor had arrived many years too late.
I almost don't want to say this out loud, but sometimes hopes and dreams bring suffering instead of happiness. Luckily, I don't mind my vision.
Kave's story is a saddening one, but it shows the story of a man willing to lose everything in order to achieve his dreams. Who is Yelan? Though very reliable, this mysterious but intelligent woman definitely seems to have her secrets. While claiming to work for the Ministry of Civil Affairs in Liyue, she's almost never present. Many people question where she gets her sharp intelligence from. So, who exactly is she?
Hello, traveler. Call me Yelan. I think you may need my help, and I just so happen to be interested in some information you have. In other words, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
While very pleasant and polite to those around her, her identity has always been a mystery. Yelan tends to be a very secretive and mysterious person. Though she keeps to herself a lot, she's extremely intelligent and powerful. While she works for the Ministry of Civil Affairs, she's almost always absent and off doing her own thing. When she is at work, it is said that she uses psychological tactics to capture her targets. Her absence is tolerated by Ningguang, while Keqing appreciates her work, though she does question her. Outside of work, Yelan tends to be carefree and calm. She enjoys naps and is willing to adjust her schedule as needed, mainly due to her hereditary physical frailty. She likes doing all of her tasks for the day at once and then resting for the rest of the day afterwards.
The Qixing know Liyue like the back of their hands, but there's certain information out there that can only be obtained using more specialized methods. That's my area of expertise. So I generally take care of all those assignments myself. When I'm tracking a target, I like to put psychological pressure on them. In the process of trying to shake me off, they'll start to panic, bring in reinforcements, alter their plan. They keep going like this until eventually, they've exposed everything I need to know.
People who know of Yelan, specifically those who get themselves into trouble, look forward to meeting her. They think that she'll help them get out of trouble or be their ally. The issue is, it's not just the allies that believe this, it's the enemies too. Sometimes she'll pick a side and offer to help, but those she helps may soon see themselves on the opposite side of her helping. Many of those who have fallen into her trap have vowed to take their revenge on her, but none of them have even come close to succeeding. Also, everyone who meets her as a different identity, so many wonder when is she really telling the truth. When her true identity is revealed, those interested in hearing the truth may not be around anymore to hear it. Yelan is not somebody that you want to mess with. A lot of Liyue citizens believe that she's a spy of some kind for some mysterious organization, purposely stirring up conflict to manipulate others for her own wants and needs. Some believe that she does it purely out of her own enjoyment without affiliation with any sort of organization. Either way, she's still a mystery, and the rumors only add to it. The only way to get the truth would be to ask her yourself, but Yelan tends to be the one that finds others, and not the other way around.
Navigating the world is a whole lot easier with a few different identities to choose from. Need me to come up with some for you?
Now, this next part is a bit strange. Occasionally, pharmacies in Liyue will receive interesting patients, to say the least. These patients, claiming to be all different types of people from all over Teyvat, seem to enjoy pain. They seem to enjoy the stinging of their skin when pharmacists supply remedies to their wounds, some even going as far as to not wanting anesthetic when going through painful therapies or operations. The thing is, all of these people are Yelan, disguised as one of her multiple identities. The physicians, amazed by their patients' high pain tolerance, are always too distracted to find out that it's all the same person. She, like anyone else, does need medical care from time to time, especially in her line of work and the inevitable exposure to danger. Though Yelan is no different from the average person with wants and needs, very few things are able to grab her interest. She travels to far-off lands, but traveling is bland to her. She is well-read and well-versed, yet doesn't particularly enjoy reading. She knows what to say to others to get what she wants, yet she takes no joy in playing mind games. Often she rolls dice to decide how to pass her time. Blindness is synonymous to blindness, while thrills afford clarity, is a quote from Yelan, and a philosophy that she lives her life by, all while managing to stick to the shadows.
In my free time, I live life completely at random. It's quite simple. I make a list of things to do, then I roll the dice to decide which one I'm going to do next. It's a surprisingly fun game, and it's really broadened my mind. In that sense, it's been quite helpful where my job is concerned.
Something interesting about Yelan is her high spice tolerance. Even Zhangling's spiciest dish isn't enough to faze her. She enjoys eating fresh or dry Jaeyun chilies. Due to her strange liking of pain maybe, spicy foods are the only things that seem to satisfy her. Though her name does not appear on any of the records of the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Yelan is a special intelligence officer that reports directly to Ningguang. She doesn't see herself as anyone's subordinate. The way she sees it, her work with Ningguang is just a way of honoring a sort of pact. Ningguang wants information that is dangerous to get, Yelan enjoys navigating her way through danger as it gives her a sense of achievement. It's uncertain when their business exchange relationship began. Yelan is known outside of Liyue as well, and many other nations of Teyvat, even stretching as far as the Abyss. For the most part though, she enjoys spending her time in the areas around the chasm and the underground of the chasm. She has a strange instinctual calling to it, as her ancestors once did. Her ancestors being heroes who either died there or went insane within the chasm's depths while fighting monsters from deep below. Yelan has always been curious about what sort of dark energy is drawing her there, even despite her better judgment. With the help of her companions lifting the seal of the chasm's depths, she was able to unveil a hidden past of her ancestors. One day, with her craving of danger, she will walk a similar path as them. She makes it her life's mission to not let Liyue fall into unseen danger as it did hundreds of years ago during the time of her ancestors. Collecting intelligence is her top priority, no matter the cost. For the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Yelan has collected 2 lists of names. A special attention list, short with only a few names, one of which being the Traveler. The people on this list could easily bring danger or harm to Liyue. The other list is a more classified secret intelligence list. Those that are on that list are the real threats to Liyue, perhaps Abyss Mages, Fatui Harbingers, or even the gods themselves. All of these people on the 2 lists, Yelan unknowingly keeps a special eye on. This work greatly pleases her. It is said by the locals to never play dice with anyone you don't know at the Yangsheng Tea House, or else terrible things might happen to you. There are rumors of a terrifying woman and to ignore her if she invites you to play. This woman, of course, is Yelan in one of her many disguises. A while ago, after the Fatui lost control of the tea house, Yelan used the opportunity to take control and to turn it into a secret base. All different types of people come through, and it's a great source of intel. From time to time, Yelan comes in, just pretending to be a regular customer, having some tea and playing some games. Though with her intelligence skills, she's always able to outwit her opponents. Those who lose are best advised to accept the loss, and those cheating are advised to do the same. Reasoning isn't really a concept at the Yangsheng Tea House, especially not with this mysterious woman.
Some say the boss of Yanshan Tea House is a young entrepreneur who got rich overnight. Some say there's a sickly and frail senior employee of the Ministry of Civil Affairs living as a hermit outside the city. Others say you should stay away from restricted areas, or you'll get haunted by a blue ghost. Obviously, Most civilians have never heard the name Yelan before, so you can safely laugh off all these rumors.
Through her career, there is one mission that stands out to Yelan as both a victory and a loss. It was a loss because she lost a family heirloom, a special bracelet that could be used as a simple form of communication when tethered to the other. She only has one now, which is useless aside from just being an accessory. The winning part though was that her enemy, Regrator, the 9th of the Fatui Harbingers, didn't get the upper hand either. Yelan intercepted a trade route run by him, capturing something of equal value to her bracelet. Fur from a strange mythical beast that died centuries ago, it being so powerful that its body is still intact. A robe made from this fur would be worth a fortune, and that was Regrator's plan as an offering to the Tsaritsa. Combining it with some yarn from Liyue, Yelan used the fur to make her own outfit.
The bracelet on my right hand? I suppose there's no harm in telling you. It contains a kind of magic used by our clan, and it can send simple messages. The meaning of those messages is buried in the blue light, and only I can decipher them.
Though Yelan today is always alone in her missions, it wasn't always that way. She once had a team of others who, like her, stuck to the darkness. They all looked out for one another. Back then, Yelan did not understand that her skills and tricks could not solve everything for her, and as a result, many members of her team were killed on missions, though they had all been prepared for that fate. After a mission investigating the Abyss, Yelan found herself alone, and for the first time, stopped for a long time. This continued for so long that Ningguang visited Yelan's wooden hut personally one day, understanding that if Yelan wanted to quit, she could, and saying that she trusted her. Yelan only replied by saying that they should no longer involve ordinary people in their work. With Yelan walking out of the hut, Ningguang could see blood dripping from Yelan's fingers, the result of hard, intense archery training. Yelan fired an arrow into the sky, the arrow bursting into water as well as the many other arrows of water that shot up from nearby water sources in the mountains, as if replying to a call from the gods themselves. As it exploded into a shower, only a faint glowing pillar of light could be seen in Yelan's hand, a hard-earned hydro vision.
Wherever there's important information to be found, the stakes involved in extracting it are often fatal. It doesn't matter how big or reliable the team under you may be, you can never completely rule out the risk. The bottom line is, have enough force at your fingertips to control the situation. I got lucky. I got my vision just a few days after realizing that. Otherwise, you'd probably be talking to a very disheveled-looking ghost right now.
Who is Yae Miko? This powerful but mysterious woman is none other than the head shrine maiden at the Grand Narukami Shrine, and editor of her own successful publishing house. Yae is a kitsune and close, trusted friend of A, or the Raiden Shogun, Inazuma's Archon herself.
I am the Guji of the Grand Narukami Shrine. The purpose of my visit is to monitor your every move, for such is the order of the shrine. Oh, come on, don't be so nervous. It's only officialese, for goodness sake. I couldn't just go gallivanting around for no reason at all, could I? Now, come on, do something amusing for me.
Yae is a descendant of Kitsune, or a type of yokai that can be translated to fox spirit. Though don't get confused, they're not ghosts, they're seen as a type of fox with a long life and mysterious powers. In folklore, Kitsune are thought to possess magic and a higher intelligence that gets more powerful with age. They're often depicted with multiple tails, usually up to 9, which indicate their age and power. Yae can be seen with 5 tails when using her burst, and 1 with her elemental skill or plunging attack. They're said to have the ability to shapeshift into human or other form, which Yae is shown to be able to do, as it's talked about in her character stories, and we almost always see her in her human form since she refuses to reveal her fox form to the traveler. As a kitsune, she can be rather mischievous. This includes at her job as Guji and as the owner of Yae's publishing house. She's also impressively good at both manipulating and reading people. This often makes others like Goro and Toma terrified at the sight of her. The tricks she plays are usually elaborate and out of her own enjoyment. Though she's not all about pranks, she does have an emotional side and shows to care about those important to her and considers the countless yokai around Inazuma to be her friends.
My favorite pastime is reading other people's stories. My second favorite is watching other people squirm. If I could find a way to combine the two... Oh, that would be entertainment in its purest form.
Yae Miko's personality is described with the analogy of mirror fragments. She can seem any sort of way she wants, cheerful, solemn, sympathetic, and nobody really knows the truth of her personality. Many have tried to figure her out, but very few have succeeded. She's able to blend into any situation, just how she blends in as a human. This isn't all because she's trying to hide something though, quite the opposite actually. She's just the type to do whatever she wants to do, whenever she wants to do it, and people get confused by that. At one time, a well-written and genre-targeted story manuscript was submitted to Yae by another one of the publishing house editors. Though they were sure their work was amazing, Yae Miko was not pleased with it. She gave the opinion that the book was shackled by the topic and not free enough. And though it was written in the format of other top sellers at the time, she told the writer not to focus on this because trends change with the decades, and to focus on the writing itself. A while later, another manuscript was submitted. It was titled Shogun Almighty, Reborn as Raiden. The other writers didn't really approve, but Yae Miko loved it. She was only concerned with one part, the author's name. She said it was too normal for a book like that, and so she gave them a new pen name.
I decided to found Yae Publishing House simply because I wished to read more interesting light novels, that's all. But it turns out that seeing frazzled authors scraping the bottom of the barrel in a desperate attempt to get their novels finished is where the real amusement comes from. You wouldn't believe some of the excuses they come up with when they're trying to get a deadline extension. Oh, so much more creative than the novels themselves.
Something Yae, as a long-living kitsune and servant of the Electro Archon, which seems to expand lifespans, has to deal with is boredom. Hundreds of years can seem to pass very quickly for her, and as the Guji, she can't always live as exciting of a life as she would always like. Such as, during ceremonies, Yae must perform her duties by attending every shrine ceremony, instead of partaking in the festivities. Though she doesn't see the issue with using her authority as Guji in order to create some entertainment for herself. Such as once ordering Naganohara fireworks to be dropped off by the Yashiro Commission to be set off after the ceremony. She's even mentioned this to the Raiden Shogun, telling her that she never told her she'd never be able to watch the festivities again as Guji. Fun and mischief keep Yae going throughout her everyday life. She also enjoys studying humanity, and certain like-minded people are able to catch her eye. One of these people being Kano Nana, a novel enthusiast who always seems to overly worry about Sayu. Sometimes Yae will watch as Sayu runs off, closely followed by an angry Kano Nana. She'll even sometimes give Kano wrong directions as to which way Sayu ran in order to prolong the chaos. Sometimes Yae will transform herself into an average human and descend from the mountain for some time in a town. She'll visit restaurants, the Asia bathhouse, getting fox fur stuck in the water, and every shop she can possibly find. And at the end of this adventure, she'll stop by Bantan Sango Detective Agency and tell them about all the missing animals she's heard about, and how desperately they need to be brought home, and sometimes this frustrates Kujo-Sara.
Humans are just fascinating creatures. That's why I'm so fond of them. They live such short lives, but for the time they're around, they shine as bright as the midday sun. There are some whose light never grows dim, even over great stretches of time. These are the lives that make for real page-turners.
A long time ago in Teyvat, the yokai such as Tengu, Oni, Tanuki, and Kitsune all used to walk among the humans. Under the Narukami, their powers are used to help the humans through an era of poverty. When seeking refuge in the mountains, they built a city near the sea, which turned into Inazuma. The lineage of Hakushi and Kitsune were some of the most well-known, and it's that line that have left many great stories. Whenever the yokai gathered, they would often share stories with one another. Kitsune Saigu was the organizer of such events, and would regularly host many yokai. Yurakusai loved telling stories to the other yokai, as they would all listen intently. But it was young Yae Miko who would nitpick the details and go back and forth with him over it, until eventually Saigu would make them stop and continue, as the rest of the yokai wanted the story to be told. Some of these stories have been passed down through the generations, but today the yokai's remaining bloodlines are growing smaller and smaller. But Yae still remembers these long, fun nights. Maybe that's where she gets her love of storytelling. Not too long ago, more than half of the 5 artisan lineages of Inazuma were cut off due to a conspiracy. Many were all banished by the Shogun. The Kamisato clan were impacted by this due to their failure in supervising their subordinates. But before the Shogun could banish them, Yae Miko, who almost never involves herself in politics, stepped in. She saved them from that fate, and while their reputation still wasn't great, at least they were still around. Many people would speculate why the Guji would step in for them, wondering why she'd do something that seemed to be a greater risk than anything, and not wise. Many different stories popped up. Yae wanted people under her control for power, she did it because she suspected something was wrong with the situation, or even speculation that she was in secret talks with the clan itself. The speculations have never amounted to anything though, and Yae has never regretted her decision. The Fire Soothing Festival Committee was an organization run by the Tenryou Commission and managed by the Grand Narukami Shrine. Their goal was to pray for a lack of fires in the coming year, as many buildings in Inazuma were constructed of wood at the time, and a singular house fire could cause a lot of damage. Years later though, fire precautions would be much more common and serious injuries wouldn't often occur, yet the committee still remained. The Shrine Maidens would dance and the people of Inazuma would give donations, with the proceeds being split 40-60 between the Shrine and the Tenryou Commission. When Yae was having financial issues when starting Yae's publishing house, she looked into the services that the Shrine ran and came across this old committee. She pointed out that all the work is done by the Shrine Maidens, so why does Mora go to the Tenryou Commission? After some changes in preparation, instead of featuring dancing Shrine Maidens, that year's Fire Soothing Festival would feature a light novel submission contest. All of the profits went to the Shrine's coffers, though the Tenryou commissioners weren't very happy about that, and Yae cared little and sent them on their way when they showed up to her publishing house. Something Yae Miko absolutely loves is fried tofu. As a kitsune, she can hardly resist its delicious flavor.
Heat oil on a medium-high flame in a pot. Add the tofu and reduce the heat to a low flame. Cook until golden brown, take it out, then serve piping hot. There you have it, fried tofu. There's nothing more delicious in this world. Well, I've told you how to make it, have I not? Why are you still standing there?
Yae Miko likes to have fun with stories of how she got her vision. Speaking to the Traveler, she tells them stories of a contest of magic where her and the other Shrine Maidens marched up Mount Yugo. They were faced with an enemy, and just before they struck, a bolt of lightning came down before Yae, presenting a vision. The Traveler questioned if that's what really happened, and Yae replied with another story about a ramen duel. The Traveler didn't believe this silly story either. Yae loves the Traveler's curiosity, asking if they'd believe her if she told them that her vision was purely ornamental and just for show.
You're saying you like how I wear my vision? You certainly have an eye for a priceless treasure. Well then, I bet you'd like to pet it.
So, do we really know how Yae Miko got her vision? I'm afraid this story's kind of lost to time in Yae's playfulness. Bennett is a young, optimistic, and hard-working member of the Adventurers Guild. He lives in Mondstadt and has a strong passion for adventure. Unfortunately though, he is cursed with horribly bad luck.
I was born unlucky. That's just the way it is. And I've lived with it so long now that I'm just used to it. But you know what? Maybe it's a good thing. It means I know that whatever luck I do have left is gonna run out sooner rather than later. So I'd better make the most of my life while it lasts. You know, go on plenty of adventures, meet loads of people. I mean, if I didn't live like that, I may never have even met you. Can you imagine?
When adventuring, he typically has a hard time finding any treasure despite his efforts, and he always seems to run into overpowered enemies. He doesn't let bad luck game down though. He's always enthusiastic about adventuring and continuously tries to better himself. Though he is the leader of his very own Benny's Adventure team, he's the only remaining member after the others decide to leave after a series of unfortunate incidents. The team is actually on the verge of being dissolved because teams at the Adventurers Guild require 3 to 4 members, but his team still exists because Catherine doesn't have the heart to break the boy's dreams of being an adventurer.
I'm the leader of Benny's Adventure Team, a rising star in the Mondstadt Adventurers Guild. Where are the others? They're all on leave right now.
What happened to his teammates? Well, Jack, the first victim, nearly fell into a gigantic chasm that opened in front of him and Benny due to an unusual geoturbulence right as they were a few feet away from treasure. Royce was knocked unconscious in an explosion due to Klee mistaking the cave they were exploring as a giant rabbit hole. And as for Heckler, shortly after he joined the team, he got a bad case of diarrhea. It turned out to be due to food poisoning, but he blamed Bennett's bad luck. All of them claim to have taken leave, but none of them really plan on coming back. back.
You wish. Benny's adventure team has had no vacancies in ages. I mean, you must be spoiled for choice, right? Why'd you want to join the unluckiest adventurer alive anyway?
On an adventure once, Bennett became severely wounded, losing more blood than he really should. But despite this, he continued forward, and at the end of his journey, he found absolutely nothing. Eventually, he passed out due to blood loss, but when he woke up, he noticed his wounds had been mysteriously cauterized, and he noticed a pyrovision in his hand pulsing to his own heartbeat. Bennett believes that his vision is a sign from the gods that they haven't given up on him despite his bad luck.
Getting recognized by the gods was the last thing I expected, seeing as how I'm so unlucky all the time. But if the gods haven't given up on me, I guess that means I shouldn't give up on me either.
He was fully raised by Adventurers Guild members. At the end of a journey gone horribly wrong, an old adventurer found something he didn't expect, a baby. A child abandoned by the world itself. The old man figured this was the meaning to his journey, and before passing away due to injuries, he brought the baby back to the guild. His final words being will, adventure, and final treasure. The guild members named the baby Bennett and raised him as one of their own, an adventurer. Bennett has always referred to the Adventurers Guild members as his dads.
I like all kinds of things, but most of all, I like adventures. One day, I'm gonna find the most valuable treasure in the whole world, and then my dad's gonna have a better life, and the Mondstadt Adventurers Guild will be back in business.
Despite having many scars, Benny has an unusual tolerance for pain. He's just gotten used to it. He often visits Barbara, the deaconess of the Church of Favonius, for medical attention and bandages. She's always willing to help him and wants him to take better care of himself, which he's very grateful for. Often, he surprises others because of his high pain tolerance and painful-looking fighting style. Something Bennett always carries with him are extra bandages that he gets from Barbara, Catherine, his dads, or other adventurers he meets out in the wild. He keeps a collection of them in his utility pouch, and he uses them with care when needed. Benny sometimes wonders about the meaning of death. He's heard many great stories of the old man who once saved him, and the adventurers around him always have a toast at funerals to honor the lives of the fallen adventurers. And like many adventurers, he believes that a good death comes at the end of a life in pursuit of adventure, and their souls are returned to their homeland by Barbatos. He once feared death, but after thinking it over, he came to the conclusion that death may be something fortunate at the end of an adventurous life. Not that he's ever very fortunate.